Donald Trump has made a series of strong statements during a cabinet meeting at the White House, claiming major military success against Iran. Trump has said Operation Epic Fury has significantly weakened Iran's military capabilities, alleging that its Navy, Air Force and missile systems have been destroyed. He further claimed that Iran's leadership structure has been dismantled and that Tehran is now acknowledging what he described as a quote-unquote decisive defeat.
This morning I want to give an update on the Operation Epic Fury, which is an appropriate name because we are absolutely obliterating them. Over the past 3 weeks, we've been hitting Iran's military capabilities at a level that few people have ever seen before. People never knew there was such a capability. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world by far. I built it during my first administration, and I used it during my second administration. Unfortunately, because I'd rather not have to use it. But it's a display of force and precision and skill like nothing the world has really witnessed, although you get a pretty good witnessing of it in Venezuela also. And that was a smaller version of what we're doing now. We're crushing their missiles and drone stockpiles, destroying their defense industrial base. We've wiped out their Navy completely, their Air Force completely. We've wiped out a large percentage of their missiles. And the missile launchers, without the launchers, the missiles don't do any good. And we've knocked out probably close to 90% of the launchers, probably more than 90% of the missiles themselves. Between some they fired and more than they fired, we knocked out. We've also destroyed a lot of the factories. We're continuing to do that, but a lot of the factories where they manufacture the drones and the missiles. The drones, too, are way down, but the reason they're down is they go one way and they don't come back, because for the most part, we're shooting them down. But we also are able to, we've really done tremendous damage to the places where they make them. So right now, their Navy is sunk in the largest elimination of a foreign Navy that has taken place, maybe ever, but certainly since World War II. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft and communications capabilities are totally dismantled. And one of the problems they do have when they deal with us is we deal with people and the people aren't able to communicate with anybody else. So, because all of their leadership has been gone. The first level is gone, and they met to pick a new level, and they're gone. They're all gone because they didn't make a deal and because they're sick people. They're really sick. They're really sinister, sick people. And if anybody thinks it was okay to have a group of people like this to have nuclear capability, nuclear weapons, and if we didn't attack with the B-2 bombers, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks of that, maybe 4 weeks. But between 2 and 4 weeks, they were planning to have a nuclear weapon. If we didn't hit them at that time with the B-2 bombers, and one of the great air raids in history, maybe the greatest, dark at night, no moon, no light, every single bomb hit its mark and just obliterated that.
The U.S. president asserted that Iran is now seeking negotiations out of desperation. Trump said, and I quote here, they are begging to make a deal, adding that Washington is not certain whether it's willing to engage unless the terms are right.
And just so we set the record straight, because I've been watching the Wall Street Journal's fake news and all these stories that get printed like, oh, I want to make a deal. They are begging to make a deal, not me. They're begging to make a deal. And anybody that saw what was happening over there would understand why they want to make a deal. But they say, oh, we're not talking to them. Anybody would know that. And only a total fool. And they're not fools. They're very smart, actually, in a certain way. And they're great negotiators. I say they're lousy fighters, but they're great negotiators. They are begging to work out a deal. I don't know if we'll be able to do that. I don't know if we're willing to do that. They should have done that 4 weeks ago. They should have done it 2 years ago. Or they should have done it when we first came into office, because 2 years ago they had free reign under Biden. Sleepy Joe, worst president in the history of our country. What he allowed to happen to our country at the borders, And even with a thing like this, but not just him, every president for 47 years, every president should have done this. They should have done it a long time ago, because you cannot give lunatics a nuclear weapon, and they would have had a big one. It stopped really when we did the B-2, but even before that, the Barack Hussein Obama, what he did where he gave them the Iran nuclear deal, gave them free will toward a nuclear weapon. Basically, he chose Iran over Israel and others that didn't want him to do it. But I terminated that deal. Had I not terminated that deal, you would have had a nuclear weapon years ago, and it would have been used, guaranteed. And one of the reasons you know about the guarantee is because their neighbors were sort of like bystanders. They weren't involved very much. They didn't choose heavy sides. They didn't want to, because people were concerned with Iran. There was a big black cloud over the Middle East. They were concerned, but all of a sudden the war starts, and they start shooting at these five, in particular, 5 countries.
Trump reiterated that the U.S. will not allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons, warning that Tehran must agree to a deal or face continued military action. Trump also suggested that a successful agreement could lead to the reopening of the critical Strait of Hormuz.
It's an amazing thing, but they would have a nuclear, and they would have used it without question. And you know that because why did they shoot all these countries that weren't even really involved with them? They weren't involved. They had no big problems because they're sick, because they want to take over the Middle East, not just Israel. Certainly Israel would have been the first on their list. They would have used nuclear weapons, a nuclear, you don't need too many of them, but they would have used a nuclear weapon on Israel, and they would have used it on the other neighbors, and then they would have come after us.
On global alliances, Trump criticized NATO, calling it ineffective and expressing disappointment over its lack of involvement. He also took aim at the United Kingdom, saying it was reluctant to be drawn into the conflict.
We're disappointed with NATO because NATO has done absolutely nothing. And I've always said, 25 years ago, I mean, I was somebody that wasn't a politician, but I was always involved in politics and I understood politics. I said 25 years ago that NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours. And I want you to remember that we said this. They didn't come to our rescue. Now they all want to help. When they're annihilated, the other side is annihilated, they said, we'd love to send ships. They actually made a statement, a couple of them, that we want to get involved when the war's over. No, it's supposed to get involved when the war's beginning, or even before it begins. We had the UK say that we'll send, this is 3 weeks ago, we'll send our aircraft carriers, which aren't the best aircraft carriers, by the way. They're toys compared to what we have. But we'll send our aircraft carrier when the war is over. I said, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Don't bother. We don't need it. And we don't need it, and we don't need them.
Trump also claimed that Gulf nations were taken aback by Iran's missile strikes, saying that the scale and targeting of the attacks came as a surprise to the region. He further alleged that several Gulf countries view Iran as a destabilizing force, describing it as a quote-unquote sick country.
Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Oman, they start shooting at them, and everybody was shocked, including us. You know why? Because they're sick, and they had a plan to take over the Middle East. And some of those missiles that were shot at them were locked long before we even started this process. They were locked and loaded and aimed at those countries. They wanted to take over the Middle East, but we happened to come along, so it wasn't so easy.
Addressing economic concerns, Trump noted that oil prices and the markets have remained relatively stable despite the escalation, claiming that this reflects confidence in U.S. leadership. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio defended the administration's stance, saying that countries should be grateful that Washington is confronting the Iranian threat.
the Department of War lets the drummer get wicked over every portion of Iran that has these military capabilities, and the results are going to bear fruit for the world. The world is going to be a safer and a better place when President Trump's mission here is achieved. And frankly, I think countries around the world, even those that are out there complaining about this a little bit, should actually be grateful that the United States has a president that's willing to confront a threat like this and not allow it to continue to persist. Because these people will kill as many Americans as they have a chance to do, and if they have a nuclear weapon, as the Vice President pointed out, they could kill millions of Americans in the future, and that is a risk that was not going to continue to exist as long as we had this president.
U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, confirmed that a 15-point framework for a potential peace deal has been shared with Iran through Pakistan, though discussions remain confidential.
I can report to you today that we have, along with your foreign policy team, presented a 15-point action list that forms the framework for a peace deal. This has been circulated through the Pakistani government, acting as the mediator. And this has resulted in strong and positive messaging in talks, as you just indicated to the press. But these are sensitive diplomatic discussions, and you have directed us to maintain confidentiality on the specific terms and not negotiate through the news media as others do. I can say this: we will see where things lead, and if we can convince Iran that this is the inflection point with no good alternatives for them other than more death and destruction. We have strong signs that this is a possibility, and if a deal happens, it will be great for the country of Iran, for the entire region, and the world at large. Your policy of peace through strength is the most effective tool for a diplomatic resolution here, just as this policy was an effective tool in each and every one of all of the other conflicts you settled in your first year. Iran is looking for an off-ramp following your powerful threat on Saturday. Your indications that you are willing to listen to peace proposals have been well received. You have instructed us that your preference is always peace, and that we should make that our priority. We have delivered that message, sir, along with the 15 points for peace. Finally, we have told Iran one last thing: don't miscalculate again.
While the U.S. projects military dominance, the path to a deal remains uncertain, with diplomacy and escalation unfolding simultaneously.